Kyros komin gen. Gis veltistos.
Welcome to Alexandria, City of Celebration. Like most Greek cities, Alexandria offered multiple forms of entertainment. Most were related to cults, religious practices, and the festivities surrounding those practices. Among those festivities, the most important ones were the dynastic celebrations, instituted in honor of the deified Ptolemaic kings and queens. These celebrations could go on for many days and included sacrifices, offerings, processions, and public banquets.
How shall I sing of thee, brightly shining one? Look, ye look hunger, little.
Games and competitions were organized whenever possible in locations such as the stadium, the hippodrome, and the gymnasium. The residents of Alexandria favored such events where athletes, poets, and musicians from Egypt and other cities of the Greek world competed. Like all good Greek cities, Alexandria had a theater. The architecture of this structure is Roman in style. This is because the team duplicated a theater from Cyrene. Roman theaters were usually semicircular and built from scratch on a flat area with structures designed to enhance oration. Greek theaters were more oblong in shape, similar to a horseshoe, and favored the slopes of natural hills to support their acoustics. At the theater, one could witness the plays of contemporary comic and tragic authors. The play you are witnessing below is Menander's Dyskolos, more commonly known as The Grouch, a late and popular entry in the Greek comedies. So many tours, so little time.
Welcome to Education in Alexandria. The education of young Alexandrians did not differ from the one generally dispensed elsewhere in ancient Greece. At the age of 7, the child was taken in charge by a tutor, who then became responsible for instilling an elementary education as well as good moral principles. Teaching was generally done outside, in the open air. In the gymnasium, students were taught not only sports, but also topics such as rhetoric, philosophy, music, and poetry. All things deemed essential to one's education at the time. Here, both girls and boys are shown attending a class given by one of the rhetoricians of the era. The team made the choice to show both genders attending class within the context of the game world. Even though it is historically inaccurate, the team felt it was not necessary to prioritize historical sexism over inclusive gameplay.
Welcome to the Islands of Pharis. The Heptastadion was a bridge-like causeway connecting the island of Pharis to mainland Alexandria. Its name is based on the Greek terms of measurement, hepta, meaning 7, and stadion, which is a measure of length of roughly 180 meters. Since its construction would separate the Grand Port to the east and the port of Eunostos to the west, it was designed with channels at each end. These openings allowed passage from one port to the other. Along with creating separate harbors for the commercial and military shipping, the causeway served as a main aqueduct for the island's inhabitants. Its presence also helped protect the island and its ports from rough wind and sea currents. At the end of antiquity, the Heptastadion disappeared under layers of silt and soil, which formed an important sedimentary deposit. While the Serapeum was the most celebrated of the temples in Alexandria, many other temples were built within the city. Most of these structures have been completely erased over time, and there is no way to discern how many existed. However, research of ancient papyri offer tantalizing hints as to the possible location of at least some of the temples. Both papyri and coins reveal evidence of many temples built for the gods. Poseidon, the god of the sea, likely had an edifice in his honor west of this island, as well as on the mainland. This temple next to you is dedicated to Isis Pharia, the divine protector of the lighthouse. This location hosted annual celebrations in the month of April, known as the Sacrum Pharia, in connection to the lighthouse. In her incarnation as Isis Fortuna, the goddess carries a rudder and a cornucopia, both symbols of good luck for navigators. Considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria was a source of great pride for the inhabitants of the city. Construction began under Ptolemy I's reign and lasted 15 years. It was completed during his son's rule. Once completed, the lighthouse was dedicated to the gods for the salvation of those who sail the sea. Built on the island of Pharos, the stone structure was 3 tiers set on top of one another in a step formation. The second floor consisted of an octagonal tower, and the top floor was a cylindrical tower topped by a statue. The interior provided space for staff rooms and a ramp which allowed the transport of fuel to the upper floors.
Παύλε, αμελή άνθρωπε, πού κοράν δίνασε?
Essential to safe navigation through the rifts and shallow waters, the Pharos was a functioning lighthouse with a beam reportedly visible 50 kilometers away. It's unclear what kind of fuel was used or how much. Any other details of how the light worked remain a mystery. For several centuries, the Pharos was one of the highest monuments ever built by man. It measured roughly 110 meters in height, compared to the Pyramid of Giza, which was around 140 meters tall. Gradually, the structure was eroded by earthquakes and then completely destroyed in 1480 CE when a fort was built over it. Archaeological excavations on the seabed have uncovered many blocks from the ancient building.
Don't forget, you can still use photo mode at any time. You can use a mount to cover long distances quickly.
Παρασκευάσματα του Δανεστή.
Αλλά είσαι στη... είναι αιώνος από όλες.
Welcome to the Great Library of Alexandria. Near the district of royal palaces and within the Moseon was the most famous library of all antiquity. The Library of Alexandria was built to house all of human knowledge. At its pinnacle, the library was believed to contain over 700,000 parchments. Throughout the centuries, fires and wars between Christianity and paganism destroyed the library, leaving nothing behind. The loss of the building, and more importantly, its vast collection, is immeasurable. As no descriptions are available, the team's rendition of the Library of Alexandria was inspired by the visuals of the Library of Chalcis at Ephesus.
Χαίρε! Τι πράττεις?
Ακίκο βάση. Ωραία να το κόβουμε ο Χρήστο πολλά.
While much of the collection was purchased at the government's expense, the library also obtained books through other means. Any books owned by travelers coming through the city were seized, to be copied for the library. The copy would then be returned to the owner and the original entered into the library's collection.
Αντίριο ελαίο, νίξ ταυτή με πρόσθετα. Συντυχαίναμε. Και ύστερα το συζύγο της ήρυσε ό,τι περιφερά, ο λέξιν κοινός λέξιν. Εντάξει.
Alexandria offered unrivaled intellectual and cultural attractions. Eminent scholars from Athens, Rhodes, and other Greek centers traveled to the city to learn and engage with other free thinkers. Both the Mouseion and the library were at the center of groundbreaking ideas and creative expression. The great minds of antiquity were usually well versed in many disciplines, which were often associated to specific schools of thought. The Peripatetics, the Stoics, and the Cynics were among the most well-known schools of the time. It is clear that Alexandria lived up to its fundamental role as a city for intellectuals, nurturing many great minds whose impact reverberates through our modern world.
Παύλα, τε και διεφθαρμένα. Πάψε του το χρή. Εάν την ήμουν πατάξιν αυτούς, οψωρία. Και τα γραφεία και ενδύματα επίρρω. Πάντα τα.
Φεύγει επίπαταξον. Σφάλμα δε γαρμέγαν, κατάσταση οργίζει με.
Hypatia of Alexandria was a Greek mathematician, philosopher, astronomer, and inventor. Though born in Greece, she eventually migrated to Alexandria, like many great minds of the time. It is there that she became the head of the Neoplatonist school of Alexandria. From most accounts, she was highly respected by her fellow Alexandrians, both as a teacher and a philosopher. With her death, the age of great ancient scientific discoveries came to an end.
Ευχάριστο συνειτά σου. Ευλογήθησε Θεή. Όταν η μορτά της πράξεως εγίνατο. Ευχάρι. Τότε τα αγαθά η χώρα σου παρά το πολιτήριο.
Callimachus was born in Cyrene and educated in Athens. After his studies, he moved to Alexandria to work in the great library. A poet and a critic, he strongly rejected the epic format of Homeric poems and instead fervently supported a shorter, more judiciously formulated style of poetry. His epigrams and elegiac poems were emulated by later poets. His work was extremely popular, second only to Homer's own works.
Αθάνατοι δοκιμάζουσαν φροντίς δοκιμασίες επουδίνες και σκληρές.
It was in Alexandria that mathematician Euclid, the father of geometry, wrote the Elements, laying out the foundational work of what would become modern algebra and number theory. Euclidean geometry would become one of the most influential systems in the evolution of mathematics.
Ενθυμού ή να αναθέσουμε, Δήμητρα, 5 ασκούς σε ταλέπια.
How do you calculate the circumference of the Earth with a camel, 2 sticks, and shadows cast by the sun? This is what Eratosthenes of Cyrene described in his principal work, Geography, while he was director of the Great Library of Alexandria. He is credited for the invention of the armillary sphere around 250 BCE.
Αχ, αχριστιάς γάρα ορίων υπερβαχιάσαν. Όχ, ταλαιπωρία μεγιστήν πάνω τούτον.
Κάλεσαν τους φίλους για να
Γιατί
φέρουν
αυτός
στο
μόνο
Βαγγέλιο
τους πραγμάτων πράττει.
Παύλος εστίν, πας άνθρωπος φάρεται, δε τα τέκνα πατάξιν. Κλαθμούς πάνι γαρίγουσον, κτίνος.
Δάκρυεται και πληγέται το μέγα σφάλμα, η συνθυμώστε και πολλήνει πληνίνα.
Γύριστη πράξης. Φεύ του πέδα τα δεινά. Μίζον το μένο σε μου. Θεοί, οργίζουσι με θεμού.
Οίκον δε κλαθμών και οδυρμών οικούστησαν πάνω, αρκετών εστιγάρουν, το κτίνος κρυφάβει.
The earliest known and most complete armillary sphere of antiquity was the Meteoroscopion of Alexandria, with an imposing 9 rings compared to the 3 or 4 of most other astrolabes. Known as the zodiac Krikatoi amongst the Greeks, the Meteoroscopion was used to determine the location of celestial bodies around the Earth. Every self-respecting astronomer of antiquity would have sought to use this tool to better understand the celestial movements.
Από του οίκου του κλαθμού βγήκες διάβολο για την αγορά.
Pythagoras of Samos was a well-known and respected philosopher and mathematician. He is best known for the Pythagorean theorem. However, there is proof that the theorem existed in Babylonia and India long before Pythagoras was born, casting some doubts as to who exactly originated the theorem.
Σιωπέ, κόσμησαν το γραφείο να πενθέντω σε μου και σου. Ο γραμματεύ απόστειλε τον αγγέλων αγγελήν την ίστην το μείον αφήξει. Πουλήσαμε 2 ασκούς αλευρών, άρα μενούσαν 3 για τον ναό. Γραμματεύ, όπου έφυγες το συμβόλαιο για την αγορά δέντρων και της ύλης. Άγε, φέρε.
Welcome to Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra VII Theophilopator ascended the throne in 51 BCE at the age of 18. Though her early attempts to maintain power were often challenged, she eventually prevailed and became the sole ruler of Egypt. According to Plutarch, she was the only Ptolemaic pharaoh to speak the Egyptian language. Her intelligence, coupled with a good education and a great political mind, allowed her to make the alliances necessary to maintain the independence of Egypt while Rome was becoming a Mediterranean empire. It is important to understand that Cleopatra's knowledge of Egyptian language and keen understanding of the culture allowed her to make powerful ideological reference that resonated with ancient Egyptians. By associating herself with the goddess Isis, the divine mother, great of magic, and repository of divine essence, Cleopatra firmly established herself as the protector of the two lands and legitimized her place on the throne. Upon his death in 51 BCE, Ptolemy XII Aulus bequeathed his kingdom to his daughter and eldest son, Cleopatra VII and Ptolemy XIII. As was custom, the siblings were married. The new pharaoh was 10 years old, his sister wife 17. The early years of their reign were not easy. Between 50 and 48 BCE, droughts and floods aggravated Egypt's problems. General Achilles and the royal advisor Pothinos kept intervening in the young ruler's political decisions, and eventually colluded to turn Ptolemy XIII against Cleopatra. By 48 BCE, Cleopatra was in exile. During Cleopatra's exile, the Roman Empire was not without its own internal conflict. Caesar and Pompey were at war with one another, and after his defeat in 48 BCE, Pompey fled to Alexandria in the hope of finding refuge. This turned out to be an unwise decision. Listening to his advisors, Ptolemy XIII elected to have Pompey assassinated, his head kept as a gift, in the hopes of acquiring Caesar's favor. This gambit backfired. Instead of earning approval, the murder of a Roman greatly angered Caesar.
Χάριν έχει. Αδελφόν έστει κατά τους πλησίους του βοηθάει.
Cleopatra, aware of Caesar's anger against Ptolemy for the murder of Pompey, decided to take advantage of the situation. She returned to Egypt in secret, hoping to establish an alliance with one of the most powerful men of the time. Outside of the legend, where she had herself smuggled into his quarters in a carpet, what exactly happened during that fateful meeting remains a mystery. However, Caesar seemed to see a better ruler for Egypt in Cleopatra than in her young and too easily influenced brother. Invoking Ptolemy XII's will, Caesar attempted to mediate peace between the siblings.
Ευχάριστος ημιτάσου, ευλογείτε σε θείες με. Αλλά οι αθάνατοι θεοί, φίλα τους είναι ημάς, επειδή θεραπεύουμε αυτής θυσίες άλλης αναθήμασιν.
Καλώς έχει.
Ω, αγαθέ, μη άχθου. Καλός και αγαθός άνθρωπος αειμνικά.
Απολαύουν είμαι.
Γαλήνευσον την καρδία, τέκνο. Δίας είδε τας πράξεις σου.
Ωφελημοτάτης πράξεως εγίνατο. Ευχιάρε με. Άνθρωπε, αγάπη των πλησίους. Ευχάριστος ημιτάσου, ευλογείτε σε θεοί.
Ω της αγαθότης, χαίρετε τα του ύφτες. Άντε καλώς έχει.
Ptolemy XIII was enraged by the turn of events, and his advisors were none too happy to see Cleopatra return. Urged on by General Achillas and Pothinos, the young pharaoh plotted against Caesar and Cleopatra, resulting in the siege of Alexandria in 47 BCE. It was in March 47 BCE that Caesar defeated Ptolemy XIII's forces. The young pharaoh drowned in the Nile after having fled the battlefield. With her opponents dead or powerless, Cleopatra married her other much younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, and finally claimed the throne of Egypt for good. The end of the Alexandrian War also cemented the romantic and political alliance between Cleopatra and Caesar.
Μη άχθου, καλός και αγαθός άνθρωπος αειμνικά.
Ω της αγαθότης, χαίρετε τα του
έστικα τους πλησίους, εκβοηθά κυβερνήσω πριν οράν Ιωνών.
In June of 47 BCE, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, whom she called Caesarion. Caesar did not accept the boy as his heir, choosing instead his nephew Octavian. Nonetheless, on his return to Rome, Caesar invited the queen and her brother husband to stay in the city. Her presence still drew much disapproval from the Senate. Always a strategist, Caesar left 4 legions in Egypt and a man he trusted to direct Egyptian affairs, giving him control of the wheat supplies essential to Rome. Cleopatra and her entourage remained in Rome until March 44 BCE, when Caesar was murdered.
Προς τι θα δεν πεθαίνε. Προς τι. Χαρίνε, άριστα.
Caesar's most faithful ally, Mark Antony, often visited the Queen of Egypt during his stay in Rome. Unlike most, he recognized the legitimacy of Caesarion, the natural son of Caesar. Antony knew he would need the riches of Egypt in order to fight Octavian and claim the Roman Empire. Cleopatra, in return, saw a powerful ally. In the winter of 41 BCE, she arranged a sumptuous tour of Egypt by boat to show Antony the wealth of her country and the power she held as its ruler. A romantic and political relationship followed. The Roman Senate was once again most displeased. Calm spirits in Rome, Antony married Octavia, sister of Octavian. Despite his marriage to Octavia, Antony remained Cleopatra's lover, and she gave birth to their children. Cleopatra increased her kingdom's territory and started a political propaganda alongside her lover in Egypt and beyond. She hoped to create a Ptolemaic federal empire with Alexandria at its center. Antony eventually repudiated his Roman wife for the Egyptian queen, much to the dismay of the Roman elite. However, while Mark Antony focused on Egypt, Octavian carefully gained military and political ascendancy over him in Rome. Octavian managed his own propaganda campaign and succeeded. The Roman people hated Mark Antony and Cleopatra. To avoid the censure still inherent in attacking a fellow Roman, Octavian simply declared war against Egypt. Rome's power still reigned supreme. The powerful Egyptian fleet, led by Cleopatra as well as Mark Antony's forces, were defeated in 31 BCE in Actium. Octavian arrived in Egypt in 30 BCE to formalize his victory. The following events remain difficult to confirm due to the many versions and legends around them. It is believed that after hearing a rumor about Cleopatra's suicide, Mark Antony committed suicide himself. He was brought to the queen as he slowly passed away. Knowing that Octavian would have her chained and paraded through Rome in defeat, Cleopatra planned her own suicide. She most likely killed herself with arsenic, though admittedly, the version where she uses an asp to deliver a fatal bite may be considered more dramatic. What happened to the body of Cleopatra is still a mystery.
Three things are necessary when exploring Egypt: water, a good camera, and an omnipresent voice coming from nowhere. can use a mount to cover long distances quickly.
Welcome to the Greek Pharaohs. Pharaohs were considered divine incarnations of the gods. As an avatar of the gods living on Earth, the pharaoh's role was to preserve fundamental values and universal harmony by removing chaos, Izfet, and ensure that justice, Mot, prevailed. The pharaoh, by divine ancestry and through multiple offerings, was the bond that unites the world of men to the world of the gods and allows the maintenance of the cosmic order. The Ptolemaic dynasty reigned over Egypt from 305 BCE to 30 BCE. The dynasty was called the Ptolemies of the Lagids, in recognition of the founder of the dynasty, Ptolemy Lagos, a Greek general and close friend of Alexander the Great. While Macedonian, Ptolemy Lagos understood that to be accepted by the Egyptian people, he would have to adopt their traditions. Upon assuming the title of pharaoh, he changed his name to Ptolemy I Soter, meaning savior. Born in 356 BCE, Alexander the Great went through a hasty education in the affairs of the kingdom before integrating into the Macedonian army, where he quickly rose through the ranks. After his father's assassination in 336 BCE, which some believed was orchestrated by Alexander himself, he became king of Macedonia. Ruler of a unified kingdom and leader of a large army, Alexander set his sights on conquest. Eager to reclaim the Greek cities of Asia Minor, he took on the Persian forces, earning victory after victory. Ever victorious, Alexander the Great marched on, laying siege to city after city until he reached Egypt, where the Persians were defeated yet again. Viewed as a liberator by the Egyptian people, Alexander decided to become pharaoh in due form. He traveled to Thebes to make a sacrifice to Apis, then went to the oasis of Siwa, where he was proclaimed son of Amun. Officially pharaoh of Egypt, Alexander spent much of the winter there and founded the city of Alexandria. Perhaps not coincidentally, being pharaoh allowed Alexander to spread propaganda to prepare further conquests. He resumed his military campaigns in 331 BCE. On his deathbed in 323 BCE, Alexander the Great gifted the satrapy of Egypt to Ptolemy Lagos. Perfectly aware of the value of Egypt, Ptolemy ensured not only the stability of the country's borders, but also its economic and military development. At the same time, he worked with the Egyptian elite to maintain the internal order of the country. By 305 BCE, Ptolemy, well respected both in Egypt and in the Mediterranean, was at the head of the largest fleet of the Hellenistic world. Ptolemy officially took the title of Pharaoh of Egypt in January 304 BCE, on the anniversary of Alexander the Great's death. Alexander died in Babylon in 323 BCE. His remains were placed first in a solid gold sarcophagus, and then within another. The casket was carried in an ornate custom wagon, gilded and set with precious stones, and pulled by 64 mules crowned with gold. The funeral procession was diverted to a grandiose temple in Alexandria, built in the conqueror's honor under the orders of Ptolemy I. Julius Caesar visited Alexander's tomb at the capture of Alexandria, and the Roman Emperor Augustus reportedly placed flowers there. However, though many powerful leaders claim to have visited it, the tomb's location has gone missing from history. Some accounts do state that the golden coffin was replaced by a glass sarcophagus, probably by Ptolemy X. It is also implied that Cleopatra may have plundered the tomb in a time of financial crisis. Try using your eagle when you want a top-down view.